Hello and welcome to Dialogue. China's top diplomat Wang Yi has called on China and India to see each other as partners rather than adversaries or threats. He made the remarks during his recent visit to India, which was followed by stops in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So how are China and India working to rebuild and strengthen ties amid global uncertainty? What does this visit mean for China's relations with its neighbors? And how might it set the stage for the upcoming Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin later this month? Join us for discussion live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Professor Faiz Zaland from Kabul University, Aravind Yelery, Associate Professor at the Center for East Asian Studies of Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is also the Honorary Fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies in New Delhi, and Wang Jin, Associate Professor at Northwest University of China. Welcome to the program. Well, let's start with Professor Zaland. If you take a look at the ties between China and the neighboring countries, especially countries, let's say, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. So what's your take from, Foreign Minister Wang Yi's recent visit?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I think China is playing a paramount important and significant role in the regional diplomacy. Wang Yi's recent visits to China, to India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, I think, breaks all those frozen clouds of the recent diplomatic problems which the region were facing, especially non-cooperation in the region, having instability, having problems in economic development and integration. China's recent diplomacy can open new era, new opportunities it can create for regional prosperity and development.
Mm-hmm. Well, Professor Zaland, if you look at the Chinese foreign policy, being always stressing the concept of development, but at the same time, we do face, challenges like security challenges, border issues, sometimes terror issue. In what way do you think the countries are working together to deal with those challenges?
I think the most important Chinese projects like CPAC and BRI can be vital in bringing together the regional players and regional countries. Diplomacy such has been the trilateral meeting between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China, and then the bilateral meeting between China and India can be very significant in bringing together not only the security challenges to be solved, but other impediments and barriers which the region faces.
Mm-hmm. Wang Jin, welcome to the show. Here, of course, many reports have highlighted the progress or the visit by Wang Yi to New Delhi. Tell us your understanding, your interpretation of this visit. Against what background we're having this visit, and what's it for, and how much progress we're seeing.
Well, actually, this is a very important visit because we know, let's be frank, during the past years, several rounds of conflicts over the border management erupted between China and India, while neither India nor China wants the conflict erupted or wants the conflict be further escalated. So against this backdrop, China and India hopes to manage the crisis and hope that the bilateral relations could be further normalized and maintain positive. Against this backdrop, Wang Yi's visit, on the one hand, further strengthen the confidence of the bilateral relations over each other, and on the other hand, we cannot forget that the upcoming the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, would be held in Tianjin. That would be also a very important summit. and joined also by Indian Prime Minister. So that's why, against this backdrop, it is highly necessary for the two countries, particularly the diplomatic channels, to communicate with each other, to try to communicate with what kind of the mechanism, what kind of dialogue contents, and what kind of the framework that would be the important foundation for the future bilateral relations. And meanwhile, we cannot forget also that there were some regional as well as international affairs or issues that co-shared the concerns by the two countries. China and India. For example, the international, the tariff imposed by United States, or maybe the regional issues such as the regional so-called extremism or regional turbulence of the neighboring countries. So against this backdrop, it is highly necessary for China and India to share our views, to manage the possible crisis, and also to enhance the further consensus over each other, to find the common shared solutions to maintain the positive progress of the bilateral relations.
Well, that's true. That's you were talking about the border clash, especially since 2020, the Galvin Valley. But last year, the leaders of China and India, President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, they met in Kazan last October. We are seeing, both sides taking solid steps to improve or to normalize their ties. For example, China has allowed Indian pilgrims to visit key sites in Xizang, and the Indian side has resumed visa services for Chinese tourists. And during Wang Yi's latest visit, the two countries also agreed to reopen trade through 3 border points. So is it fair to say that the relationship between China and India now moving in a more positive and cooperative direction?
Yes, I think, of course, that means that the bilateral relations between India and China now is moving towards a positive direction, as you mentioned. We cannot forget that there are still some kind of the negative factors. For example, the trust between the different societies. Both inside China over India as well, both inside Indian society towards China. And there were, of course, some kind of criticism and misunderstandings from each other. But these things could be changed and could be transformed from this positive mechanism for more communication, for more dialogues, for more the connections between the two nations. Because, as you mentioned, that India and China are the great powers, and no countries in this world want to see the escalation of tension erupted between China and India. And also, Chinese people as well, Indian people does not want war, does not want conflict. So that's why the two countries are moving towards the much more positive the direction. And also, I'm also personally looking forward to maybe to visit India in the future to get a kind of the new visa to see to attend maybe the dialogues and the conferences in India, to share our views with each other, to enhance the friendship with each other.
Right, that's a part of the people-to-people exchange, which is important to bilateral relationship. Professor Zaland, of course, one of the important part of Wang Yi's visit to India is about the border issue, of course. Officially we know that it's a special representatives of both countries to meet and talk about the boundary question. And the two sides agreed to establish an expert group to work toward an early harvest in boundary delimitation. How important is that move? So it seems to me like they're working in a very solid way to solve a very, let's say, tricky issue which has been there for decades.
I think it's a very big breakthrough in a bilateral discussion and cooperation. It's an opportunity for both countries to resolve these historical problems, start with new history, new cooperation, which is built on bilateral trust, bilateral confidence, and bilateral cooperation. Both huge countries, economically and also politically, they are very important for the region. Their cooperation, their bilateral economic and political cooperation can directly affect the region and can bring stability, progress, and prosperity, not only to India and China more, but to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the regional players.
Well, Wang Jin, it's said that both countries will talk to each other, the eastern section, the middle section, in addition to the western section, and the Indian side will come again to China next year, 2026, to talk about the western part of this border issue there. What are the challenges? Are you confident we can work out, as like an early harvest in boundary delimitation?
Well, if we are talking about this kind of...
Wang Jin, please,
yeah, thank you. If we're talking about the border issues totally, completely perfectly resolved, I don't think I'm very optimistic, because we're talking about very complicating political as well, the border control issues. So it's very hard to end all these kind of the divisions within a very short term. But if we are talking about kind of the management mechanism that could be possibly be established between China and India to prevent further escalation of the border crisis, to control or to manage the possible coming back of the tension in this region, maybe I'm a little bit positive, or much more positive about this outcome, because as you mentioned, that border issues for any country, it is the most controversial issues in the modern world. So border issues are most easily to be led to the war, total war between different countries. So if the two countries have no direct communication channel, if the two bordering countries, they do not have the very solid mechanism for the border crisis management, it would be easily to be turned this kind of the crisis into the border war. So when the two countries try to start to talk, it means that, okay, maybe they cannot solve all the problem, but if they show the confidence or the willingness to manage the ongoing crisis. So that's why I call it positive.
Well, Professor Zaland, of course, there are, in addition to these specific issues to deal with, there are also the idea, of a perception or conception of each other. That's why I think Foreign Minister Wang Yi mentioned that, India and China should view each other as quote-unquote partners rather than adversaries or threats. That's important. That would lay, a framework of if we view each other as partners, then we can work in a constructive way to solve the problems for the benefits of both sides. But if we view each other as, say, not friendly nations, and that creates actually more problems rather than solving the problem. Is that the case?
That's true. I think both countries, they have a very professional, very highly expert diplomats. They both pursue big dreams, big goals in the region and also in world order. Both countries are very important for the new world order, especially for Asia to prosper more. Their cooperation, their bilateral understanding of solving such adversaries and problems to be solved through diplomacy, through communication, through bilateral cooperation, I think it can enhance more regional stability. It will bring more business and economy to the region and also to both countries. Their economy has already been prospering by bilateral cooperation. As I've been noticing that the export and import ratio of both countries are huge. They are bigger than anyone in the region, which is very important for opening and benefiting from such dialogue and such opportunities.
Professor Yelery, as we said, during the meeting with Wang Yi, the Prime Minister Modi said, stressed the need to view bilateral relations from long-term perspective, stating that India-China cooperation is essential for realizing an Asian century, and that cooperation between the two will benefit global development and humanity. How do you look at this, long-term big vision? I think both sides agree with each other. The relationship is very important for both nations and also for the world. We can't afford to have, somehow a relationship to be defined by the, border issue or a single issue or single problem there. We should look at the big picture. Do you think that's the overriding understanding of the relationship here?
I think yes. I think largely that has been the underlying positions of both the countries and both the leaders here. Recently, Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit has been really incredible. That is a stepping stone. Largely, the context of the Indo-China relations should be broader. The optics should be a lot broader than just minimalistic and deductive approach. That helps to build a long-term relationship. As you said correctly, India and China, despite being ups and downs in the relationship, have been trading. In past 25 years, the trade relationship of both the countries have really gone up. And it is, I think, China is one of the largest trading partner of India. So when you talk about the engagement, when you talk about non-political engagements, one has to look at the relationship of both the countries from a larger, broader perspective that is more conducive to develop the relationship and not just speak about one or two issues over here.
Earlier, we touched upon this, the trend. We see the relationship right now. We see more positive direction, the cooperative direction, rebuilding ties or even strengthening ties, especially when it comes to the trade issue, people-to-people exchanges here. Three more border points for trade. Do you see this is a trend? Probably that we will keep that kind of trend for quite a long time to come.
Of course, yes, that's pretty important. One has to remember that India and China both share a very long Himalayan border, and there have been a lot of things that are happening in these borderlands. And most of these points have been playing an important role in connecting the geographies and also transborder points of entry for trade and goods. In the past, both the countries have tried to activate and use these cross-boundary points for trading and people-to-people exchanges, and it was pretty working good. And I think reactivating these points is also one of the incremental ways. One has to also remember that in past 1 year precisely, both parties have tried to develop the relationship in an incremental fashion instead of one outblown. There has been, as you said correctly, China has agreed and let the Indian tourists to visit Kailash Mansarovar. India has opened the visa for the tourists from China. I think that's pretty constructive point in developing the relationship between the two neighbors. I would not say two countries, but two neighbors.
Also, the Chinese ambassador, recently, I think today or yesterday, he said that he called basically the U.S. as a bully in terms of course, his commenting on the tariff threat on India, 50%, of course, on China, 40+%, more or less the same level. Anyway, he talked about China will stand firmly with India on this issue. So I would assume that's a welcoming gesture from the Chinese side to be supportive to the given the situation now India faces.
So I think most important thing is actually China, U.S. calls it one of the richest, one of the developed country, but the act of tariffs brings down, brings out, the biggest country, richer country could be immature also. Because it is neglecting the core fact on the drop that China has been fastest growing economy, Asian economy. In the present context, India is also emerging. India is also one of the fastest growing economies. Both these economies are in Asia, and they're in top 5. China is number 2. India is coming number 4. So I think the U.S. Act is neglecting the fact on the ground that India and China hold an important position in the global economy, global multilateralism. So his statements definitely sounds out what India also feels about the U.S. U.S. feels vulnerable. U.S. feels insecure, and maybe that is why it is trying to push away these two countries from the larger global political economy.
Well, Wang Jin, of course, there are some commentators, they indicate that, the U.S. tariff on India's side somehow, galvanized this relationship between China and India. Is that the case? As far as I can remember, of course, this, rebuilding effort to rebuild the ties, goes way back than the recent tariff, right?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, as you mentioned, because sometimes the false four is the false four might be the common foe, and then it might become make the former falls into the kind of rivalries into the kind of the friendship. So that's interesting. But I think that maybe United States played a kind of a role in the facilitating the normalization or the facilitating much more closer ties between China and India. But I think maybe from the longer term, or if from the very macro the level or perspective, that China and India's relations should be be prosperous and should be bright, and to some extent, maybe it's just a matter of time. Because the two nations, and both with large population, both with large market, this kind of the influence or market potential, and also the both countries has a lot of things that could create kind of a win-win situation over economic. In regard of economic, financial, political, as well as other sectors. So that's why I think maybe United States just make the things maybe faster. Make this kind of the cooperation area much faster. But I think that the bilateral ties between China and India would be much more prosperous, much more brighter, maybe without the United States factor.
Mm-hmm. Professor Garland, following the visit to India, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, of course, went to Afghanistan in Kabul, where he held this China, Afghanistan, Pakistan trilateral foreign minister dialogue. Tell us more on that. What's the mechanism and what's the agenda for this year, and what's the focus for the three countries?
As you know, the trilateral meeting, it is a highly important stage for developing trilaterally diplomacy, connectivity, and collaboration, not only for the prosperity of all three countries involved in this platform, but to enhance regional security, regional economic prosperity, and regional collaboration. In the recent meeting, for sure, security was one of the main concerns to be discussed, but CPEC involvement or bringing Afghanistan into the CPEC, having in Afghanistan more investment, not only in the mining sector, but also in infrastructure, bringing together Pakistan and Afghanistan on one page where they can collaborate on their adversaries, which recently Pakistan has been claiming with their insecurity inside to be somehow proxied from Afghanistan. And from Afghanistan side also the same concerns have been shared. So China is trying to bridge both countries, bring both countries to a same page, to a collaborative manner where they can compete on economic prosperity rather on adversaries.
Yeah, I know that in order to achieve this economic, common development of the three nations, for example, there is a need, of course, to deal with some of the lingering issues, especially between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Some of them like, border issues, disputes, refugees, or terrorism. Where are we now on those issues between Pakistan and Afghanistan, Professor Zaland?
There is, yes, with these recent trilateral meetings, developments have been perceived, border management SOPs have been applied, more collaboration have been enhanced. It's still a way to achieve the most important goal of both countries living in full collaboration on the border. But as you know, we share a very long border, a very porous border, a very mountainous terrain, which is very difficult, especially for Afghanistan, to secure with lacking resources, lacking management and capacity, lacking intelligentsia and surveillance capacities. So with this trilateral platform, I think such capacities will be enhanced inside Afghanistan, where we can achieve the common goals.
Mm-hmm. Professor Yelery, of course, part of the Wang Yi's trip is for this upcoming SCO Leaders Summit at the end of this month. And so we understand that Prime Minister Modi and other leaders, like actually more than 20 state leaders, will be in Tianjin for the summit. Any expectation, in terms of this overall development of the regional group?
Oh, yes, there is an upward excitement from India, because I think SCO has emerged an important platform. And for India, it has become important now because for the present dispensation, as Prime Minister Modi, the Foreign Affairs Minister and the Defense Minister, they consistently been talking about, the common concern of the region is about extremism, terrorism, as we speak about. Then more about, as the multilateralism's importance rises in Asia, there is a rising, consensus among the SCO countries to fight against the globalization, to fight against the tariff, to fight against the, bringing the, common factor, denomination factor to work together. It looks like, apart from any other formats where India and China is working, I mean, SCO, we are working together, BRICS, we are working together. There is a rising consensus between the two leadership and the two countries to fight against this, exclusivism. We have been excluded by the richer countries or the Western countries. So SCO comes at a point when US is levying, duties and tariffs to most of its partners. There is no friend now with the US. So I think there is a natural inclination from Indian side that we give, or India gives, too much of importance to SCO, where it will come talk to 20 leaders, as you said correctly, when they come together. Most of the common agenda would be fighting against this exclusivism, to fighting against the tariffs, so fighting against the predatory measures, and disturb the entire ecosystem of a global political economy, disturbing the supply chains, disturbing the innovation systems, which global South, countries like China and India, are important part and key figures.
Wang Jin, of course, previously, as part of the priorities for SCO, security, for example, the fight against terrorism, of course, is one, it remains important. But also we are seeing, countries working together toward, other economic issues, given what's going on around the world. You need to probably reduce your reliance on, like a U.S. market, for example, or U.S. dollar, for example, given the abuse of the dollar position, sanctions or punitive tariffs, etc. You need to develop your economy. To be economically strong, that's important for any country, especially for SCO members here. Your expectation of that kind of cooperation, India, China, Pakistan, Russia, Iran, even other like Arab nations, several of them, of course. So working together economically is also, let's say, top priority?
I think the SCO could bring the relations between different member states or different countries across different regions much more closer. Both economically as well as politically, as maybe culturally, because as you mentioned, the SCO grown up from the very mechanism for the border control, border management now has been grown up into the very comprehensive, many multi-dimensional, the multinational mechanism, multilateral mechanism, and also more and more states are now being included, including India and Pakistan. Maybe new members would come. So that's why, against this backdrop, it is maybe for these member states, they have the opportunity to seek the potential cooperative areas with each other, and on the other hand, maybe they talk more about financial and economic. So we're talking about the future, the outline, or the kind of the plan we're looking ahead. So maybe everything is possible.
Yes. Well, on that note, we are coming to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinzhuo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.